Question number 4. The two-dimensional lattice of graphene is an arrangement of carbon atoms forming a honeycomb lattice of lattice spacing A, as shown below. The carbon atoms occupy the vertices. The Wigner seed cell has an area of. Okay, so here this is the lattice figure which is shown here. So it is look like an honeycomb structure or hexagonal structure. And here we have to find the area of the Wigner seed cell. So first of all, we should know what is meant by Wigner seed cell. So Wigner seed cell is basically a primitive unit cell. Okay, so then the question, what is by primitive unit cell? So a primitive unit cell is a unit cell with total number of lattice points. Lattice point is 1. Okay, so the primitive unit cell are the unit cell which is having a single lattice point. Okay, so single lattice point means effectively it can have a single lattice point. Then all other unit cell would be non-primitive unit cell. For example, if you take a rectangle lattice like this. So consider a rectangle lattice. So in rectangle lattice, the lattice points are present only at the corners. Okay. Now, is this unit cell is primitive or not? Now, the first question is which is the unit cell here? So we can take any unit. So here, the unit cell that I have taken is this. Okay. So all the other unit cell is a repetition of this. Okay. So if you repeat this unit cell, we'll get the under lattice. So this is our unit cell. So unit cell is of rectangular shape and the lattice points are present only at the corners. Now, what is the effective number of lattice points in one unit cell? So if you look at the lattice point, so we can have the lattice point at all 4 corners. Okay, then directly we may say the answer, okay, there are 4 number of lattice points, but the answer is wrong. There is no 4 points because if you look at one corner, so actually one corner is sharing with 4 unit cells. So effectively, the contribution of one lattice point to one of the unit cell is only 1 by 4. The contribution of one lattice point to one of the unit cell is only 1 by 4. And we have 4 such corners or 4 such lattice points. So the total contribution of lattice point, that is the number of effectively the number of lattice point in a unit cell is 4 times 1 by 4 is equal to 1. So therefore, in this rectangular unit cell, it is basically an example for a primitive unit cell. Is an example for primitive unit cell. And which are the non-primitive unit cell? Is there is any possibility of non-primitive unit cell? Yes, there are non-primitive unit cells. For example, if you consider a rectangular centered unit cell, So if you take a rectangular centered unit cell, then there will be lattice point at corners and as well as at the center of the unit cell. If you take this unit cell, then there are contribution from corners. So there are four corners. The contribution from each corner is 1 by 4. So 4 times 1 by 4 is 1. Plus there will be contribution from the center of the lattice. So the total number of lattice point in this particular unit cell is 2. So therefore, this is an example for a non-primitive unit cell. Okay, so the rectangular centered unit cell is an example for a non-primitive unit cell. Okay, now our question is, what is a Wigner seed cell? So Wigner seed cell is actually an example for a primitive unit cell. Okay, so its construction is slightly complicated, but in order to answer this question, that is not required for us, because if we have any lattice, then the Wigner seed cell can be found by drawing the area closest to that lattice point. So the shaded region is the region which should be very close to the central dot compared to the other lattice point. So this is basically called the Wigner seed cell. So it is the area close to a lattice point than any other lattice points. So if you take a Wigner seed cell, it will contain only single lattice point. So therefore, Wigner seed cell is an example for a primitive unit cell. Now, the thing is the area or the volume of a primitive unit cell will be a constant for a lattice. Okay, so for a particular lattice, the area or volume of a primitive unit cell will be a constant. So therefore, whatever be the shape of the primitive unit cell, the area of the primitive unit cell would remain same. Okay, so whether you are taken the Wigner seed cell or the primitive unit cell of in some other shape, it should have of the same area or the same volume. So that means the Wigner seed cell, since Wigner cell is the primitive unit cell, the area of the Wigner seed cell equal to the area required to occupy one lattice point. Area of Wigner seed cell is equal to the area of primitive unit cell. That means it is equal to the area to occupy one unit cell. Now this is a rectangular, sorry, this is an hexagonal lattice. So the lattice points are present all corners, and its side is given as A. The side is given as A. So if you find the area of this hexagonal, so this hexagonal contains how many lattice points? We have 6 lattice points, but effectively it is not having 6 lattice points, because if you take one corner, the one corner is actually connected with 3 hexagonals. So therefore, the contribution of one corner to one of the hexagonal is only 1 by 3, and we have 6 corners, so 6 into 1 by 3, it will be equal to 2. So total number of lattice points inside this hexagonal is 2. One hexagonal contains 2 lattice points. Okay, so the area of the hexagonal would be the area to occupy 2 lattice points. then what would be the area to occupy one lattice point? That would be half of the area of this hexagonal, and that would be equal to the area of Wigner's cell. So that is the idea, that is the way to answer this particular question. So the area of Wigner's cell is equal to half of the area of hexagonal. Now, how to find the area of hexagonal? So this hexagonal will have a total of how many equilateral triangle? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with 6 times root 3 by 4 a square. Is that okay? So therefore, the answer would be root 3. Okay, so 1 3 would cancel. Okay, so 3 root 3 by 4 a square. So this would be the correct answer. 3 root 3 by 4 a square. Okay, so recall, if anybody is if any question is to find the area of Wigner's seed cell or the volume of the Wigner's seed cell, only you have to find is the area or the volume required to occupy one lattice point. So obviously, the figure will have some lattice shown there. It may be hexagonal lattice or square lattice or rectangular centered lattice. There will be some lattices, and it will be easy to find the area of one unit cell and just find out how many lattice points are present within that unit cell. So from which we can find out the area to occupy one lattice point, that is the area of Wigner's cell or the volume of the Wigner's cell. Okay, so these are three-dimensional questions. The same thing can be extended to three-dimensional problem as well. Okay, so that's all for this question. So we'll discuss it, the next question in the next video.